Welcome to Beyond Love and Light podcast, where we bypass the fluff, lift the veil, and explore how to navigate the human experience as a spiritual being. I am Laura Gavander, a transformation coach, psyche, and emotion code facilitator. Join me as we delve into topics relating to human consciousness, alternative healing modalities, quantum physics, and the psychology of spirituality. I bring you insights and information from amazing guests and my own experience and observations. Please remember to subscribe to get notifications. And if you'd like to know more about me and my work, please go to my website, www.lauragavander.com. So let's get on with the podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Beyond Love and Light podcast. I am Laura Gavanter, and I have a very special guest today. Well, you know what? I think all my guests are special because that's why I choose them. My guest today is Vanessa Petronelli. She has over 16 years of transformative experience and has dedicated her life to guiding individuals through life's pivotal transitions, empowering them to unlock their true potential and embrace profound personal awakenings. Her approach fuses spiritual wisdom with cutting-edge strategies, creating a powerful methodology that speaks to both the soul and the demands of modern life. Through intuitive coaching, energy healing, somatic awareness, business consulting, and equine guided facilitation, Vanessa helps her clients cultivate inner peace, ignite their creativity, and develop an authentic presence that inspires those around them. Her work has been recognized by major media outlets, including Good Morning America, People, the Oscars. Look at you. Parade, Glamour, and more. Welcome, Vanessa.
Oh, thank you, Laura. It's so good to be here with you. I'm really excited for our conversation.
So great to have you here. Now, I'm going to ask you something that is not mentioned in your bio, but I happen to know. I always like to know how people got to what they're doing now, because there's
Mm.
usually some event in their life that's kind of like was the pivotal transition point where they went from this is what I did back then to what they're doing now. And I happen to know that you had a whole other life before. You were a model, a yoga teacher, you were in a band, right?
Mhm.
You had all these like performance kind of things. And now you do this like high level spiritual work. And I'd love to know, one, was that something that you always felt was inside of you and then just kind of maybe was suppressed until the right time came? Or was there something else that sort of created that transition?
This is a great question, and I'm going to try to keep it as condensed as
Sure.
possible because my life story actually is kind of interesting, but it's also pretty long because this whole connection to spirituality started when I was a little girl. I was always a very intuitive and very spiritual. Even though I was Catholic, I didn't feel religious in that sense. I felt I had this unique relationship to God, source, creator in my own unique way. And there was a knowing that I was meant to help people, that I was here for a purpose. So that was instilled within me in a very innate way. But when you're a little kid or you're growing up, you're not sure how
Mhm.
that's going to look. So at 14, I heard what felt to me like God's voice instructing me to go into the entertainment industry. And that's how I ended up doing the modeling. I was in a female pop group. I was acting, and I got into that industry. And my whole intention with that at that time was I'm in this to help people on a very large scale.
Mm.
Whatever projects I get involved in, they're going to be purposeful. I mean, I was that starry-eyed, very, optimistic, had no idea what was happening in the Hollywood realm and all that at the time. And, that was the intention. And it was incredible because as soon as I felt that knowing get activated by this message from God, the doors just opened and all these things happened. And I still, went to high school and I went to college and got my degree and all of that. And on the side, I was doing all this amazing work and I did it for 10 years. The more I was insistent upon this being the path for me, the only way to help people, to be a steward for God in this way, the more I started to feel this intuitive knowing that something wasn't working. And
Mm.
all of these projects and these next level opportunities that would take me to a much higher visibility and income level and success, in this industry, especially in the acting and the modeling, the singing, they started to just disappear or they started to not work out.
Mm.
And then I actually started my own marketing and promotions agency, and I was working with Toronto Film Festival and, the Canadian Film Center because I'm originally from Canada. And a lot of those opportunities started to feel very superficial. And I'm thinking, well, here I am promoting products that are not actually healthy or good for you. Things are very superficial. I don't feel this connection to this anymore. And that fire that I had for so long, this determination, my will, not God's will, but my will to get to Hollywood, to make it happen, started to dissolve year after. And it was at 24,
Mm.
23, 24ish. I was set out to go to Hollywood. I had meetings with agents because I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to get out of Toronto. I need to head to the US. I need to go to LA and make this happen. I was going to stay with a friend of a friend. Everything was set up, ready to go. And 3 weeks before I was ready to get on that plane to head to LA, I had this horrific virus spread all inside of my mouth, all over my lips, and on my face. What a perfect way to manifest,
Seriously.
the roadblock, right? Like God's like hitting me with a 2x4
Wow.
now. And so I couldn't go because you're judged by your looks,
Of course. Couldn't be
right?
more obvious. Could not be more
Exactly.
obvious.
So that was the turning point, the transition for me to let go of all this work I had been doing very slowly, let go, dissolve my agency that I had built, that business, stepping away from the acting, the modeling, the singing, all of that.
Mm.
And so that is when doors started to open again in this place of deep surrender and letting go. And I actually went back into a post grad program and met a lot of individuals through that became very significant way showers, door openers, supporters of me starting the business I've been running for over 16 years now. They became my spiritual teachers, my life coaches, my energy healers. So much happened from that transitionary point. And I mean, if I were to even tell you some of the stories in there, it just really felt like pure divine magic in
Mm.
that sense. And it was enchanting in so many ways. And so that's how I got into this business. But I had a knowing at around like 23, 24 that I was going to become a coach. I don't know how I knew, I just knew. And when I was growing up, I always seemed to attract everybody around me, students, friends, all of that, peers, to come to me and tell me their life problems. And I would somehow just kind of know how to guide them. And I didn't know where the wisdom came from. You relate, of course, of course.
Yep, same story.
Yeah, and so it was just this natural progression, and I mean, I have had many iterations in this business in 16 years. I wish I could say it's one the way it started is exactly where it is now, but actually I'm going to even clear cancel delete that. Why wish that it needs to be the same? It's been
Well, yeah, you
beautiful to see the
evolve.
evolution. You
Yeah.
evolve and you shift how you teach, how you facilitate, what you do, how you do it, the ways you do it, and it's been a very beautiful and also tumultuous journey
Mm.
getting to this point. I mean, it's been hard because my own spiritual growth, my own personal growth, my own, ascension and evolution is very deeply intertwined with how I serve, my purpose, my business, all of that. So it's been a wild journey, but to get here, it's been really cool to look back and see how all these pieces came together.
Well, what's so great also was that you followed like the messages, you followed the desire. And what's so great is that you're now able to guide others who are going through the same or will be going through. Because I had the same thing. I had a whole 15-year career in the beauty industry,
Mm,
kind of like, you start somewhere and then it keeps going. And then you're just like, this is not who I am. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. So you understand when people are at that point, they may not know exactly what the next thing is, but they know this is not it. And they know they're supposed to do more. And there's nothing better than to be able to like guide
mm,
them through and to learn trust and to look at their intuition and see what's so I can
mm.
relate to that in a big way.
I love that. Yeah, it's wild how we find our way to where we're meant to be.
Mhm.
We're meant to be, you know? So I love that you can relate to this. It's great.
Oh, 100%. And, so I love that you've, like, talk about, like, following, like, what comes next. You're working with horses now. You're doing, like,
Yeah.
equine therapy. Where did that come I mean, I know you live in you live in horse country,
Yes,
but
yes.
how did that come about? Did you have a session? Did you, like what was the impetus for this?
So back in 2019, I started to have this vision of working with animals. I've always been an animal lover. I have two rescue dogs. If I could rescue 100, I would. And I feel, and this is the honest thing. Actually, I've never even talked about this, I don't think publicly. I've always felt that animals were supposed to be a part of my life and my path.
Mm,
But based on conditioning and programming from when I was a little girl, a lot of my life was based on external success, how I looked, all of like self-image, all of that. And I mean, that's a whole conversation for another day, but I think that I denied this deep reverence and love for animals. And because I wasn't raised with any, I think I was like backlogged with many years of wanting and needing that, desire to take care of, love, and learn from animals. So I had this, vision in 2019 that I would be offering this type of work in a kind of like a retreat setting. And I thought that that was very fascinating. I was like, "Oh, that's kind of neat. Okay, well, we'll see what happens." And so I started to become very interested in learning about horses in particular. I've always loved horses, but I definitely did not have the background like a lot of people in the equestrian industry or even the equine facilitated, equine guided education industry, where they're like, "Oh, I grew up with horses. I've owned horses. I ride horses. I've
mm,
been around them my whole life. I dreamed about being a horse." Like, I didn't have any of that,
mm,
but there was definitely this strong pull with horses and dogs, and I've kind of felt that connection deepening and getting like roots, gaining roots over the last several years. So I'd started really learning about rescues and sanctuaries and watching horse, rescues from kill pens and auctions, learning how that works, watching videos on animal communication and equine, not really equine therapy, but like equine body work and energy healing with horses and learning from horses. And that just kind of deepened and deepened and deepened. And it was on my 40th birthday in August of 2023. I was sitting in a session that was gifted to me. And in this session, he's an astrologer and kind of does channeling work, stuff that, it's similar but very different from what I do. I declared in that moment to him, my deepest desire is to work with horses and to work with animals. And if God can show me the way forward with this, I am all in. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know why it feels so important, but I know that it's I want it in my journey, and I can
mm,
feel that on a much deeper level, that deeper knowing. Again, after I declared this, all of a sudden, all these doors open. And you've got to remember, yes, I live in Tennessee, but I don't own my own horses. I don't have a ranch or a farm.
yeah,
I've,
so it's not
at
that
this
easy.
No, I mean, I've ridden horses in the past. I took lessons in the past. I loved it. It was lovely, but I didn't have any handling skills of horses. I didn't know what it was like to work with them, any of that. But then these doors started to open and all these relationships started to step in. And then I, went to the sanctuary that I've been volunteering at for over a year. And I went in and I was very clear to the owner, like, I want to learn everything there is about horses and taking care of them and handling them. And my goal is to eventually bring, coaching into this with equines, doing some kind of transformational healing work, coaching work with the horses. And he
Mm,
said, "Well, that's kind of one of my desires too, and one of my visions." And so this journey began. And I've been working very closely. It was a herd of six. It's now a herd of six, but we lost one of the horses this
mm,
summer, and the horses have just honestly guided everything. So I have been researching, studying all of this. And the horses in, I think it was around March, April, said it's time. It's time to start doing this work. It's time to stop thinking that you need all of this. So I was doing horsemanship and riding lessons again.
Mm.
I mean, I have poured myself into this work, and it made a lot of sense as to why this was an important part of my path. The horses, once they kind of opened it up, I believe they truly are divine messengers of God. They are the epitome of the divine feminine awakening on this planet. And because animals are pre-ego and we're working as humans to be post-ego, and Eckhart Tolle actually talks a lot about that, we have a lot to learn from animals. And incorporating them, having them be my partner has been the most, I can't even describe it, because I've gone to equine therapy. I have an equine therapist that I've been working with for over a year. And, working with these animals is more accelerated than just regular coaching and therapy. And I can confidently say that because I've been doing this work for 20 years on myself. And I've never seen something go so deep so quickly, because when you are around horses, you need to be congruent. Horses demand the truth of who we are, the
Mhm.
authentic self,
Wow.
not the BS that we sell to each other every day as humans, where we're like, oh, I'm doing great. And inside we're, ruminating, or we're suffering in silence. Like, they are like nature's tuning forks, because they're such sensitive animals. And being prey animals, they have to trust you, because their survival depends on that.
Can you give an example of what that looks like? So you say like they call you out on your BS. Like give me an example of how just for people that are not familiar with this, because I am
Yes.
somewhat familiar, so I know it, but like what happens or what do they do or how do you know this?
Well, I have a personal story that is so undeniably unforgettable. And I want to preface this. Working with horses is so experiential that even trying to describe this work, it's very hard for people to get. You have to do it.
Yeah, I
And all my
agree.
clients this year have said that. They're
I
like,
agree.
you could talk all day about this, but until you
Right.
actually
Right.
experience what happens when you're in a session with them and you're partnering them with them in this sacred, spiritual, energetic way, it kind of can be like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds cool," but no, it really is cool on a very cellular level. So last winter, I was at the barn on my own, and all the horses were out in the pasture. And I like to go out and greet them. And that particular morning was in the new year. It was in January, and I had gone out to the pasture and I was greeting them. And one of the mares, who I've been very deeply connected with, named Belle, um, she's usually very affectionate and will absolutely love to come in and say hello. Well, that morning, none of them wanted anything to do with me. In fact, Belle made it so obvious. She was miffed by my presence. She sniffed me and tossed her head back, like saying, "Get the F away from me." And I was like, whoa, okay. I'm just gonna leave you guys. So, and the thing is with the horses, you can't take it personally, right? It's like, and in that moment, I'm like, oh, maybe she's in the mood today, because when it's cold out, they're a little spicier. And so I left, and I know in my own kind of research and training and just studying of all of this, that that meant something.
Mm.
Horses are mirrors. They're instant biofeedback beings. And so I stood on the other side of the fence, like the wired fence, and I just stood there. And all of a sudden, all of the horses started to form like this semicircle around me. I actually have a reel about
Hmm.
this. And they stood around staring at me, and I could feel this energy coming toward me. And one of the horses, because I am very intuitively connected and I can communicate with animals, started saying, "You're not being real with us." And it was in that moment that I started sobbing. Like, I mean, like tears
It's the
shed.
truth. You resonated with the truth.
Yeah, it was like, "You're right." And, there was some stuff that I was needing to emotionally
Mhm.
process in that
Mhm.
moment that I hadn't done up until that moment. I cried for 10 minutes, and they were just holding space for me.
Yes.
Then
Wow.
After I
Wow.
finished crying, all of them moved toward the fence line and came over to me saying, "Now you're real. Now we want to be with you." It was,
Incredible.
I mean, it's just, I can't
I
even tell
know,
you.
I know. It's mind blowing. It really
It
is mind
is.
blowing.
It is. But I say this and then I'll be quiet because I've been kind of
No,
going
no,
on
no, no.
a tangent with this because I can talk about them for hours. I said this to one of my clients in one of her final sessions. A horse is just a horse to a person. A horse eating hay is just a horse eating hay when you do not have context and you do not actually know how sacred and how special these beings are. Because when they shift into being of service towards us as humans, it is not just a horse eating anymore. It becomes so much more. There's a message when the horse is eating and you're in its presence and you
Mm,
have context around the work. So it is so much deeper working with them than what people realize. And there's so many layers to it. So, anyways, that has been the journey with the horses and how it's come to be. And I've just finished my first season this year of working with them, and we'll start to resume again in the early spring in like March.
wow, it's so amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's a
Hmm.
real personal. Yeah, I had a pretty amazing experience as well that you can't really describe. I mean, yeah, it sounds like something, but when you're there,
Yes.
you're just like, oh my God, these are magical beings. Yeah, really,
Hmm.
really. So that's so great that you've added this to your
Thank
repertoire.
you. Thank you. Yeah, it really is a gift.
It's a
Yeah.
gift. You're a gift to them and vice versa, you
I
know.
hope so. I always ask that. I want to make sure. And that's the thing when I work with them, they get free choice. I don't
Mm.
select the horse that's going to come into the session. They're all loose. They're free to leave. They're free to stay. And I actually think the work for my work, other equine, therapists, facilitators, all of that might have a different kind of perspective around this. But from where I stand, I actually think it's more potent that way because when they choose to be with you and to come into session with you, whew,
Yeah.
that is special.
Hmm.
And it really does mean something in that. And when they choose to leave, you know that there's something that they're not
Hmm.
interested in. There's something that's incongruent. And so there's a lot of, you have to be very highly attuned, not just in the training of how to guide sessions, but for me, it's like an innate thing of like learning to notice the subtleties, the
Right.
body language, the way they're communicating, how they're communicating, the energy that they're in because it's giving you a message all the time. They're
Right.
always sharing something with you that you
Right.
know.
What's also so incredible about it is it forces you to be so present.
Yes, that's the gift of this. Yes, yes,
You
yes.
just are there. Like and if you're not, they're out of here. Like
Yeah,
they,
they know when you're in your head. When you're in your head, they are not there. So this is why it's so beautiful to work with them, especially because I do so much somatic work in my
right.
regular coaching work and transformative sessions. When you're with the horses, they are somatic. And so you have to get into your body. And that's been the main theme really with a lot of my work with clients in the last, 7, 8 months has been getting out of their heads into their bodies, becoming more present, learning to really feel emotions and the wide gamut of them,
Mhm.
learning how to be in their bodies and that is where our intuition, that is where that connection to nature and to our animal self steps forward. It forces us to be in that. And all these things, these words of how I'm describing it sound so cliche. Oh, why not just meditate or just, I can feel my body. It's different.
It's different.
And it's potent and it's so, so deeply subjective and shows up for a person exactly where they are on their journey.
Right. Right. You can't say that for many other
No.
modalities or processes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so you've been in this industry for a while, as have I. What do you see is the biggest shift happening in terms of people seeking healing? I mean, you kind of touched on a little bit seeking healing and self-improvement, and especially within the last 4 years, like what are you noticing is coming up for people, or what are they seeking?
Well, yeah, so for me in my work, what definitely has started to happen, what I've seen over the last 4 years, I mean, the industry, coaching, healing space, spiritual space has definitely shifted. There has been a split in the timeline, and people are needing and wanting different things. I mean, from a business perspective, a lot of the BSers out there that have promised all these things, quick results, all of that. I feel like a lot of people are leaving the industry who are not meant to be in this because they're not surviving.
Mm,
I know from a business perspective, every single person that I have connected with, colleagues, friends who are in this industry, all of that, the work has shifted, the demand has shifted, the context of it has changed. From a client perspective, from what people are looking for, transitions have been a massive theme. And in
mm,
2020, I was in a little bit of a mini sabbatical, and God had told me, you're going to build a body of work that's going to help people to go through these transitional stages. And it has been such an initiation for me, but I recognize that we're going through such immense change on the planet in a way that our minds, our egos cannot comprehend. Stuff is happening so quickly at such a speed of light
mm,
that the transformation is hard to quantify at times because it's happening on such deep levels, I believe, on a subtle level, but also on a DNA level, all of that. And so, because there's so much change happening, transitions are becoming a lot more frequent, meaning
mm,
the business or the career that I've been in for 20 years doesn't feel like it's the right thing. I've been married to this person for this long, something's not computing anymore. I don't know who the heck I am and where I'm going and what is happening with me. My health has declined. I don't have any motivation or any inspiration, any vision on how to move forward. There's been a lot of confusion, a lot of discombobulation, a lot of uncertainty, unknown, and the ego wanting to find ways to cling to the external world for stability.
mhm,
Because we've been able, I believe, prior to 2020 to get away with that. And so people are really seeing shakeups happening in their money. That's a big area, in their businesses, in their careers, and within themselves. I think that there's relational ones as well. Relationships have been a big theme this year. And I believe what we're really seeing is a transition of like really letting go on a very intricate level. It's not just this transcendental level anymore with spirituality. And what I believe, it's about really coming in and down. Like the focus has to be inward right now, and it has been for 4 years. It's not sexy work. It's not fun work. It's probably the hardest, deepest work possible, which is why the trauma work, the somatic work, the deep belief and emotional work is so important right now. It's not just about thinking positively or trying to manifest things. Like that shit's gone. I
that
hope I
shit's
could
gone.
say
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's like this whole thing of being able to just manifest your dream life, manifest clients, like that stuff worked before. Myself and many of my colleagues and other friends who've been in this path and have been on the spiritual path for years, we've all said it doesn't work like that. It really is the alignment to the divine plan that God, creator, spirit has in place for you. And if anything of that is going to deter you off that path, it will not happen. And we are being forced to really examine very deeply things that we have believed, that we have held on to, habits that are keeping us really stuck or heavy. Like we're being forced to see it all with like this, this magnetic scope. I don't even know how you call it. Microscope.
I was-
Thank you. A microscope. I'm like, what is a magnet? No, it's not a magnetic scope. This microscope at like a 10,000x. That's what it feels like. But for most people, I'm seeing the common theme and thread of transition and awakening, transition, the change being very hard and awakening to that. And quick fixes are just not going to do it anymore. It's done.
And what's
Over.
happening at the same time is there's more distractions than ever.
Yes.
There's more pulling us into polarity, pulling us
Yeah.
like, pick a side, which side are you on? And you have to be vocal about it. So there's so much external distraction that it's making that even more difficult because this is like the
Yeah.
quiet and the insight. People don't know. They don't even know, they don't know what's theirs anymore. There's
Yeah.
so much programming, a lot of it, most of it is beneath the surface,
Hmm.
subliminally. We don't even know what we've been programmed because it's coming at us from all, our phones, the television, movies, music. it's coming at us from all places. We don't know how it's getting in there. But then that's also adding to the confusion. And that's adding to the like, oh, I don't really feel right. And I don't know what's me anymore. So this is a extremely challenging time on the planet. It also is like pretty miraculous as well.
Agreed. I agree. I mean, the distractions are at an all-time high. I believe the powers that be, whoever or whatever they are, know that this is such a rapid time of awakening and consciousness on the planet. And so we're being thrown everything from every angle, which is why, if you really are devout on this path, if you really are committed to your purpose and being a steward and a way shower for a new paradigm of consciousness and what we might call, quote unquote, the new earth, it's
Right.
like you have to tune into your self leadership now. Like that's a big piece. It's not about the leadership of leading others as so much as it about leading yourself, because all this out here is going to pull you out of alignment from what you really need to do in here. It's like it's time to roll up our sleeves and do the deep work.
Mhm.
Shit, get off the pot kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like you don't want things to be challenging. Well, let me tell you, go inward. That's where you're going to start to find the real answers, the real solutions. You have to be able to cut the cord to all of these distractions outside, to all of these narratives, to all of this programming in order to get the real truth and the real answers of how to move forward in your life.
Yeah.
Because we can't keep doing this. We're spinning in circles. And if we're going to like really get out of what we have set ourselves up in, we have to do something completely radically different. And focusing out here is not working.
Right. And what I've noticed also is that spirituality has become in, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
and the move, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like, people that are in high places in that field, it's been hijacked also. So
Yes, it
it's like
has.
discernment now is the most
Mhm.
important thing that people can pay attention to is go feel like, how does something feel? When you hear something, what does it feel like to you? Does that feel right? Do you
Mhm.
agree with that? But so many people are so used to numbing that or turning that off that it's not even an operation with them anymore.
Right.
So now is a time where discernment is more important than ever
Mhm.
because we're getting fed so much information and someone who seemed, oh, they're so spiritual. Oh, I do yoga or I drink green juice or I do this. And it's like, it has nothing to do with spirituality.
It's so true. It's just on the surface. It's a surface superficial thing of thinking, "Oh, that's spirituality," when it really isn't. And I agree with you. Discernment is huge because spirituality has been massively hijacked. It's also the reason why I stopped trance channeling.
Oh, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so for a while you were doing a lot of trance channeling, right? And that was just something like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to learn how to do this. Is that
Well, it happened not by choice. It happened by chance
Mhm.
in to the mind, but it was also a part of my path. And I've always been very intuitive. I've done mediumship work, psychic work, all of that. And my channel opened at a workshop years ago when I lived in Southern California. And after that, the Palladian guides came through, and I was working with these wonderful beings who channeled a lot of really amazing messages. I mean, hours and hours and hours of messages. And I would do live events and, I
I
did a lot
remember,
of trance
yeah.
channeling, sessions with clients, and it included in my work. When we moved to Tennessee, so it's really two reasons. One, I felt that it was much easier to get compromised
Mm,
doing this trance channeling work and getting hijacked. Now, I want to make it very clear. I always had support when I would do this work from my mentors and my people who've trained and helped me to
mhm,
develop that
mhm.
level of reach, if you will,
Right.
with my energy, with my channeling work. So for me, integrity and keeping the channel pristine and who I'd be channeling through pristine was of the utmost important thing for me, because I know how dangerous this work can be. It is working with energies that are not familiar, that are not from this planet, and we can get hijacked very easily. And I have seen people who wanted to channel, who are not meant to channel, go into psychosis
Yeah.
from this type of work. It really is life altering and sometimes not in a positive way. And this was during a time when it was like kind of cool for people to start channeling,
Right,
especially
right.
in the Southern California community. So I embraced it for years, and it was some of the hardest work I've ever done on my body and on myself. And when we moved to Tennessee in 2021, I could feel that something was changing around that for me. First of all, the energy here in Tennessee is very different than Southern
Oh,
California.
yeah.
Southern California's ley lines energy prior to 2020 was amazing. And it was very easy to slip into a beautiful trance state and to be able to, deliver those messages because it's so spiritual there.
Mm,
It's a much higher vibration. Well, in some parts,
okay.
it was a much higher vibration. When we moved to Tennessee, the energy here is very different. It's much more earthy, it's much
Mm,
more grounding. It's there's a for lack of better description, there's a density in terms of the consciousness here
right.
can't support some of this work. And I don't say that from a place of judgment to call people here dense. It's such a horrible
No,
thing to
no, it's I
kind of
know what you're
refer
saying.
to it, but vibrationally, it's just not sustainable to do that kind of work because the frequencies here are different. So, yeah, in 2021, I completed with them because I felt like I was not able to access and channel the cleanest energy
Mm,
from where I stood vibrationally here. But also in one of my, last sessions, I noticed that there was something that felt different about who was coming through. And I was like,
interesting.
nope, I'm done. I'm like, this is spiritual warfare that we are going through on this planet right now. And I know that somebody like myself can get hijacked very easily
Wow.
and in a tricky way because sometimes you just don't know. And so I cut all of that and I was like, thank you, Palladians. I love
Good for
you. I
you.
you
Yes.
and I'm done. We're done. I'm not compromising my body. I'm not compromising clients. I feel complete. And so that was one of the most easiest choices actually for me in the transition in my work to not include that anymore, and it felt right. And that's the thing, we have to be very discerning about who we're going to, who's delivering messages, what they're tapping into, what their background is, who do they work with, who, like, what is coming through,
Yeah.
so, and it's one of those things that a lot of people in the spiritual and new age community can prey upon people who are vulnerable and are feeling disempowered to take their power away from them. And that is just not something I subscribe to as somebody in this work. So, yeah,
Well,
you
that
have to be
was
careful.
yeah, and that was so responsible of you also to recognize that and to follow it. Because yeah, you don't know. You're opening up energies to come in and, to protect not only yourself, but the people that you're working with. So, wow, it's really fascinating. Yeah, I've seen that too. I've seen some very well-known people that I used to follow. All of a sudden, you see you're like, what?
Yeah.
Another one
Yeah,
gone.
they've just been taken away, and there's people that I've even worked with where I'm like, I don't even know who they are anymore. They're
Right.
gone. It's so strange to me. So, but everybody has their path, and really at the end of the day, there is no good or bad, right or wrong. It's just what they're choosing.
Of course, of course. So, Vanessa, I think that's a good place to wrap up. This has been such an interesting conversation. I loved sharing your work. You have so much integrity and authenticity, and it just comes through. It really does, and just how committed you are to this. So, I want to thank you so much for that.
Mm.
Where can
Thank
people reach you? I'll have all the links, the show notes, I'll have all the links
Yeah.
below, but where can they reach you if they want to find out more about you and working with you?
Sure. My website is a great place, vanessapetronelli.com. But you know what? I'm very active on social media. So you can find me on TikTok, you can find me on Facebook, you can also find me on Instagram. Just type my name in, you will find me. You can send me a DM that way. And I'm also on LinkedIn, but those are the best places to find me at this point.
Great, great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so much fun. Thank you everyone for tuning in and see you soon.